Most people think kidney damage is a slow, distant problem. Something that happens to old people. Something caused by high blood pressure, salt, or not drinking enough water. Something their doctor will catch later. But there is a quieter, more dangerous version of kidney damage that starts long before any diagnosis. It does not announce itself. It does not show up on a basic blood test right away. It is already happening in millions of people who think they are healthy. And one of the biggest drivers of it is not what most people expect. It is fructose, the same molecule found in table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, soft drinks, fruit juices, pastries, sauces, and countless ultra-processed foods. The kind of sugar that feels harmless. The kind that fits into a modern day of eating without any warning at all. That is the sugar that pushes your kidneys into a silent emergency state, a state that researchers have a very specific name for: hyperfiltration. And once you understand what hyperfiltration is and how fructose creates the conditions for it, you start to see the real reason your kidneys are more fragile than you were ever told. To understand this, we need to start with what your kidneys actually do. Your kidneys are not just filters. They are precision organs. Inside each kidney are roughly 1 million microscopic filtering units called nephrons. And inside each nephron sits a tiny ball of blood vessels called a glomerulus. The glomerulus is where the real filtering happens. Blood flows in under pressure. The glomerulus allows water, salts, and waste products to pass through. But it blocks important things like proteins and blood cells from leaking out. That balance is one of the most critical balances in your entire body. Too little filtration and waste builds up. Too much filtration and the system starts damaging itself. That second scenario is what hyperfiltration is. Hyperfiltration is when the glomeruli are forced to filter blood at abnormally high pressure for too long under metabolic stress they were never designed to handle. Imagine pressing the gas pedal of your car down to the floor while the car is parked. The engine revs. The RPMs climb. Nothing is moving, but internally, heat rises, parts wear, and damage begins accumulating. That is hyperfiltration inside the kidney. The filters are running too hot. The pressure inside the glomeruli is too high, and every day it continues, the delicate filtering structures take a little more damage. Most people never feel this. There is no pain. There is no obvious warning. Your kidneys do not send out an alarm. They just quietly operate at higher pressure and slowly get worse. And that is where fructose enters the story. Because fructose does something very specific inside kidney cells that most people are never told about. It creates an internal energy crisis. To understand why, you have to remember one fact. Glucose and fructose are not the same. Glucose is tightly regulated. When a cell has enough energy, its glucose handling slows down. Fructose does not play by those rules. When fructose enters a cell, it is rapidly phosphorylated by an enzyme called ketohexokinase. This enzyme works quickly and does not have the usual feedback breaks. So fructose gets burned through the early metabolic pathway very fast. And in doing so, it consumes large amounts of a molecule called ATP. ATP is the energy currency of every cell in your body. It powers cell repair. It powers membrane pumps. It powers nearly every essential cellular process. When fructose rapidly depletes ATP, it triggers the breakdown of energy molecules and leads to the production of intracellular uric acid inside the cell. Not the uric acid in your joints. This is uric acid produced inside the cell itself as a direct byproduct of fructose metabolism. And inside the cell, uric acid does something dangerous. It behaves as a pro-oxidant. That means it increases oxidative stress. It triggers inflammatory signaling. It disrupts normal mitochondrial function, and it impairs the way blood vessels inside the kidney relax and regulate themselves. This is the spark that ignites the hyperfiltration crisis, because kidney blood vessels do not react neutrally to this damage. They respond. The tiny vessels that feed each glomerulus change their tone. Some constrict, others stay more open. And when the incoming vessel stays relatively open while the outgoing vessel tightens, pressure inside the glomerulus rises. More pressure means more filtration. More filtration might sound good, but in this case, it means the kidney is being forced to work harder just to handle the metabolic stress fructose has created inside its own cells. This is not healthy filtration. This is filtration under strain. This is the kidney trying to protect itself by pushing harder while the very cause of the problem is still flooding in. And if this pressure state becomes chronic, the consequences begin stacking. The filtering barrier is made of several delicate layers: endothelial cells lining the blood vessels, the glomerular basement membrane, and a specialized cell called the podocyte, which wraps around the capillaries and helps control what can pass through. Under repeated hyperfiltration, this barrier begins taking damage. Podocytes can become stressed. Some may be lost. The basement membrane can thicken or become disorganized. The endothelial lining can malfunction. And slowly, something starts happening that should never happen in a healthy kidney. Protein begins leaking into the urine. This is called proteinuria, or more specifically, albuminuria, when it involves albumin. Albumin is supposed to stay in your blood. It helps regulate fluid balance. It helps transport hormones and nutrients. It is a critical protein. But when the pressure inside the glomeruli rises high enough, and when the filter structure becomes damaged enough, albumin can leak through. At first, the leakage is small. It might not even be detected without specific testing, but it is an early sign that the filter is failing. It is the kidney's version of a crack in the dam. And here is the part nobody teaches. When the filter is damaged, the body often tries to compensate by increasing filtration pressure even more in the healthy remaining nephrons. That compensation accelerates damage in those nephrons too, so nephrons begin failing one by one. Fewer filters remain. The surviving filters are forced to work even harder. Hyperfiltration becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. And fructose, when consumed frequently in a modern diet, keeps feeding that cycle. Now add another layer: metabolic dysfunction. Because fructose does not only cause problems inside kidney cells, it also drives changes throughout the body. It contributes to insulin resistance. It contributes to fatty liver. It contributes to elevated triglycerides. It contributes to higher blood pressure. It contributes to visceral fat accumulation. And all of these conditions worsen kidney stress. Insulin resistance changes how the kidney handles sodium. Elevated blood pressure pushes even more pressure through the glomeruli. Inflammation rises throughout the vascular system. Oxidative stress rises in organs everywhere. So not only is fructose hurting the kidney directly through uric acid and ATP depletion, it is also building an entire metabolic environment that makes the kidney more vulnerable. That is why hyperfiltration is not a simple problem. It is not just about one sugary drink. It is about chronic exposure in a body that is already under metabolic stress. And this is also why so many people discover kidney issues late. Because the early stages of hyperfiltration can actually look like normal or even slightly elevated kidney function on a basic test. A test like estimated GFR can look okay, or even higher than expected, for a while. But that is not necessarily a sign of health. Sometimes, higher than normal filtration is the exact warning sign being missed. By the time standard tests start showing declining function, a significant amount of damage may have already occurred. Nephrons do not regenerate. Once they scar, they are gone. So every year of silent hyperfiltration is a year of potentially permanent loss of filtering capacity. And the modern world makes this worse in a very specific way. Because modern diets do not deliver fructose in small, infrequent doses. They deliver it constantly. Sweetened breakfasts, sugary coffee drinks, juices, sodas, energy drinks, sauces, processed snacks, desserts, healthy protein bars. The body rarely gets a break from fructose exposure, and the kidney rarely gets a break from the metabolic aftermath. Every spike adds a little more oxidative stress. Every spike adds a little more intracellular uric acid production. Every spike adds a little more pressure on the glomerular filter. Over years, this is how silent damage becomes visible disease. And the scariest part is that much of it is invisible to the person living through it. Hyperfiltration does not hurt. Podocyte stress does not hurt. Early albumin leakage does not hurt. The kidney does not give you pain, fatigue, or dramatic warning signs until function has dropped significantly. So the damage compounds in silence. But here is the important shift. The same way fructose fuels this process, reducing it can begin to relieve it. When fructose exposure drops, intracellular ATP depletion stops being triggered over and over. Intracellular uric acid production falls. Oxidative stress inside kidney cells decreases. Inflammatory signaling calms down. Blood vessels inside the kidney can regulate tone more normally again. The filter is no longer being pushed into the same high-pressure state meal after meal. Insulin resistance can improve. Blood pressure can improve. Visceral fat often decreases. Metabolic inflammation often decreases. The kidney does not get magically repaired. Damaged nephrons do not grow back. But you can stop the engine from redlining. You can stop forcing healthy nephrons into the same destructive cycle. You can slow or even halt the trajectory of damage for remaining filters. And that is why this topic matters. Because hyperfiltration is not a future problem. It is not a problem that only happens in severe disease. It is a present tense problem happening inside millions of people who think their kidneys are fine. It is happening in people who consume fructose every day from drinks, processed foods, sauces, and snacks they were told were harmless. It is happening in people with completely normal-looking lab results. It is happening in people with no symptoms at all. That is the silent crisis. And understanding it flips the entire way you think about sugar. Because sugar is no longer just a calorie issue. It is no longer just a weight issue. It is a pressure issue, a filter issue, a cellular energy issue, a long-term organ survival issue. It is the difference between your kidneys quietly holding up through decades of life or slowly burning out in a state of chronic metabolic stress. Your kidneys were designed to last you a lifetime. They were not designed to be forced into hyperfiltration day after day. They were not designed to handle the non-stop fructose exposure of the modern food environment. And the damage they absorb from that environment often does not show up until it is already serious. So when you hear about fructose, do not think of it as sweetness. Think of it as pressure. Think of it as stress. Think of it as a signal your kidneys have to respond to. Every time fructose arrives in large amounts, your kidneys pay part of the price. Most of the time, you do not feel it. Most of the time, you do not see it. But biology keeps count. Every spike, every meal, every year, that is the hyperfiltration crisis. And once you understand it, the glass of juice, the bottle of soda, the sweet snack, the so-called natural sugar in a modern drink, none of them look the same again. They start looking like what they actually are. A signal to your kidneys. A signal asking them to filter harder, fight harder, and compensate harder than nature ever intended. And in a world where those signals never stop, your kidneys become the quiet organ that pays the highest price.